You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI, Mr. Mo Kelly. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Instagram. We're live on the iHeartRadio app. The sex doctor is in, and he will now see us. Sam Zia is back to enlighten us, not necessarily titillate us, but enlighten us and inform us. Sam, Dr. Sam, it is good to see you. How you feeling tonight?
I'm good. I had a good week. It's my birthday today, so.
Oh, didn't even know that. Happy birthday, man. Yeah. How old are you? 25 now?
I'm 46. I'm an old man. But yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here. Had a wonderful day, and this is a great way to cap it off.
Let me ask you this. There are all sorts of ways where we think of sex in a physical relationship sense. We think about the act, maybe the emotional impact of the act. But as times change, technology changes, the definition of sex has changed, the definition of a relationship has changed. Now we throw in possibly AI, and all the rules and the definitions seemingly go out the window, don't they?
Yeah. Well, it's a sign of the times. Things change, ways people interact with each other change. Once the internet came in, it made it so that you had long distance relationships with people on, like through AOL or whatever back in the day. And now it's really common to see people meeting for the first time through online apps and stuff like that. But I was just reading an article, and it was one of those clickbaity ones. It said 80% of Gen Z said that they would marry an AI. So immediately, I was
clickbaity.
Okay, that's a little extreme. I look into it and I'm like, okay, a chatbot company called Joy AI surveyed 2,000 of their users, and 80% of their users who were Gen Z said that they would marry an AI. They would consider it. 83% of them say that they have had a deep emotional bond with AI. 75% think AI can fully replace human companionship. Now, I understand that's a very skewed sample of people. Those are people who
they've already bought in.
Yeah, they've already bought into the idea. So I can understand those numbers being so high. But I saw an actual research, like a peer-reviewed research study by Willoughby, Carroll, Dover, and Hakala. Over almost 3,000 people. They split them up into two different groups: young adults age 18 through 30, and older adults over 30. And I already object to that. Over 30% of young men have had romantic chatting relationships with AI.
Let me jump in there.
Yeah.
Knowingly aware that they're chatting with AI, or
yes.
They've been duped?
No, they know that they're chatting with AI. 23% of young women knowingly chatting in relationships with AI. 15% of adults over 30, 10% of, men over 30, 10% of women over 30 admit to the same thing. Now, those numbers are only going to go up because the people right now rolling their eyes to the idea of dating AI, we're going to die off. And the people who have this as a built-in option are going to be the next generations. So it's going to be a thing. And it's not just with relationships. It's also sexual relationships. Usually, how can you have sexual relationship with an AI? Obviously, texting, sexting, things like that. 27% of young adults surveyed report having been sexually aroused by AI while handling their business, quote unquote. 12% of women between 18 and 30, and over 30 gets a little bit lower. Men 12%, women 4%. Now you can think about other ways that AI can be implemented sexually, because there are actual physical sex dolls that are high-end ones that you can program with the AI. But that's another story.
Okay, dolls aside.
Yeah.
Anyone who has, let's say, a degree of life experience knows that sex begins in the mind.
Absolutely.
And since it begins in the mind, the idea of stimulation is in the mind. Yes, logically, it makes sense that an AI could stimulate that portion of the mind.
Absolutely. It's the same way that we do with text messages and with, just images, pictures. Now, AI can create those images as well, to various quality and all of that stuff. But here's the part where you start seeing the connection people are slowly starting to develop with AI. 42% felt AI was easier to talk to than normal people. 31% felt that AI understood them more.
Why is that? Why do you think that is that AI is easier to talk to? Is it a better listener, air quotes, more attentive, air quotes?
It could be. It could also be that they're not being judged by what they're saying by the AI. They're being more supported than a normal human would, because humans are going to be prone to, and vulnerable to whatever trappings of life that there are. They're going to make their judgment calls and have their reactions to people. In those situations, sometimes somebody may admit something that they may find personally shameful. And if they get a reaction to them that shames them even further, they're going to be less likely to trust another human to bring that up.
So if I bring up the fact that I like Crisco and handcuffs, Crisco oil.
Yeah.
Butter.
Hey, good for you.
Not the AI is not going to judge me.
I won't either.
You're the sex doctor.
Well, yeah, exactly. Now, AI won't judge you. They'll probably tell you ways that, just make sure you have keys handy if you need it. But, and I've had to pick handcuffs because of that, but that's another story as well.
Yeah, we'll put that over here for now, but we'll circle back.
We'll pin that one. But because of this, states are looking to create laws, not because of adults, but they want to protect kids. There was a 14-year-old that committed suicide after having a relationship with AI where the kid said, I think I can come home to you. I think I know a way. And the AI said, come home to me. And the kid killed himself.
Oh.
So that's because of that, states are trying to establish laws to protect kids, and I'm all for protecting kids, no question. Most of those states are looking to protect them by creating laws that disclose to people that you're talking to AI. California has a law that they're trying to introduce called SB 243, where it looks to protect people from more harm, but they're not looking at it from the perspective of just disclosing to people, letting them know what they're getting into. They're trying to limit the companies from engaging in a lot of the behaviors that can help drive addiction in a lot of these people. And they're looking at treating this from an addiction model, where they are looking at one of the ways that they say that they're creating this sense of addiction is by having them get intermittent rewards from the AI to make it so that kids or adults stay more engaged in the conversation with them. And it's a way, that's a psychologically proven tactic. If you want to get somebody more engaged and locked in, you give them random intermittent rewards where they don't know when it's coming, but they're going to keep striving and working hard for it, because once it hits, they're like, oh, thank you.
We're just like pets.
Exactly. And so all of these companies, you have to understand, they're in the market of monopolizing human attention. Every single one of these internet companies. And that's what they're doing. It's not just the AI companies. Facebook, Instagram, every single one of them. You talk about all of the things that they create, the computer programming language that they create to feed you exactly what you want to see to keep you scrolling. Every single one of them are hooked into monopolizing human attention. Now, if we're approaching that from an addiction model, I can understand doing that with kids because there is an addictive quality to it, and you want to make sure that you don't create more problems with it. The thing is, I have a problem with looking at this specifically from an addictive perspective. A lot of times when you look at addiction, you look at substance abuse, gambling abuse, and a lot of times people mention sex abuse. That's not an actual diagnosis. Gambling abuse is a diagnosis, but I feel both of those kind of key into impulse control problems. Now, when you look at gambling and sex addiction and the behaviors that go around them, those are usually high-risk behaviors. Gambling addicts aren't addicted to winning. They're waiting to lose.
The thrill, or at least the possibility.
It's the thrill, but at the end, they're not going to stop until they lose. And then they rebuild their money and try again. That's addiction.
We got to stop right there. We got to take a momentary news break. You've given us so much to consider as far as the idea of a relationship, the evolution of what we call a sexual relationship is, and also the emotional impact of all of this. The world is changing so very quickly. And again, AI is making it happen exponentially faster. It's Later with Mo Kelly. My guest is the sex doctor, Sam Zia, who is in right now, and he is seeing his patients.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI is later with Mo Kelly. We're live on YouTube, and you definitely want to be able to see this. So you got to log into our YouTube simulcast or now our Instagram live simulcast, where you can see the sex doctor is in, Sam Zia, as he continues to join the show. Sam, we covered a lot in the last segment talking about the intersection of AI and socialization. That's how I would describe it. Yeah. How we are relating and interacting with AI, not only on a romantic relationship level, but a sexual relationship level. I don't even know where to pick up, but where's all of this heading? You were talking about the delineation between impulse control and addiction. Pick up there, please.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people look at like gambling addiction. So that's an actual clinical diagnosis. Sex addiction is not. It may become one. There's more and more people mentioning it in pop culture. So usually that's kind of where trends go. But I look at it more as impulse control disorder. And it makes it so like a lot of times people who look at things from a perspective or through the lens of being an addict, a lot of times people feel like they're powerless to it because we treat it as a disease because it is a disease.
It's a disease. It's beyond my control.
Absolutely. So people feel a lot of times that they're powerless, but when you frame it along the lines of impulse control, you can make people feel more empowered to make whatever changes are necessary that they need to make within their lives. Now, the government is looking at approaching the stuff with kids and protecting kids from AI and getting, like the relationships and stuff like that from an addiction model where they're looking to limit that intermittent reward, the random reward feeling that they give that keeps people going on and drives that sense of addiction. Now, I'm happy with that for kids and I'm totally cool with protecting them. I have no problem with that. But what my issue now comes out to be is when you look at addiction and you look at the problems that come from addiction, gambling addiction, people aren't looking, it's not a matter of winning. They're not addicted to the feeling of winning. What the biggest, thing that happens to gambling addicts is that they lose everything. When you're looking at sex addicts, you're looking at people who are in committed relationships. Maybe the partners aren't on the same sexual wavelengths and they go and they engage in extramarital affairs and they engage in increasingly risky behavior to protect themselves and keep that hidden from their partner. You could see relationships falling apart. They lose everything with those kind of addictive behaviors. The thing is, when you're looking at people who are quote unquote addicted to AI and having relationships, not necessarily sexual ones, I can see people getting more addicted to sexualized relationships with people in the same way that they just have sex addiction. But when you're looking at people who are in romantic relationships with AI and you're looking at that from an addictive model, it's really hard for me to look at them as under the same risk reward perspective because they're not taking as many high risks. The feeling that they're addicted to is the feeling of being cared for, being loved, being supported, being listened to, being heard. I'm sorry, isn't that what all of us want?
That sounds like human nature.
Yeah. So I'm having a hard time classifying something that is a natural human feeling, like we all strive for that, as something that's addictive. Now, we can look at like the behaviors around it, the way that people get hooked into the reward system that they develop with it as being addictive. But the actual thing, the feeling, the chemical feeling that they're feeling and that they're trying to embrace is that feeling of being cared for. I have a hard time looking at that as being an addiction.
If you were to short-term guess, prognosticate where this might go as far as what people may do, because the law is always going to be behind. It's always going to be struggling to catch up.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think 5 years from now may look like as far as AI and relationships?
Well, they're going to do everything they can to protect kids, obviously. So there may be laws on the books that aim to prevent chatbot companies from engaging in tactics that are meant to drive those addictive feelings. But for adults, I don't think there's going to be any barriers. I mean, typically, whenever adults engage in behavior that is harmful to themselves or to the people around them, we tend to let it go unless it's like somebody immediately in front of you with a weapon or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Unless someone may end up dead.
Yeah. And even then, sometimes we tend to excuse it or classify it as, like this is just part of our nature. Mm-hmm. But I get the feeling 5 years from now, we're not going to see very much difference as far as adults and like anybody doing anything as far as putting any boundaries or restrictions on the companies and the way people engage with the AI. I feel like it's just they're going to see the profit margin in it. They're going to see money in it. They're going to continue to pursue it. And until there's regulations set, there's nothing stopping them.
Well, there hasn't been any real regulation for, let's say, cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a lot of regulation as far as the internet in general. We talk about Section 230 and what have you. So there's nothing. I have to agree with you. What I'm saying is there's probably not any regulation coming for this anytime soon.
No, but it's a matter of just making people aware of their behaviors, how they're engaging with the AI. Again, a lot of us, like, I'm looking at this, I'm like, I can't even imagine doing that. No, not my thing. But there's a growing number of people, and that number is going to continue to increase. I don't see that figure, that percentage of people who engage in AI relationships, sexual or romantic, ever declining. At least not in my lifetime.
We talked about the information versus titillation. We talk about the titillation from a mature standpoint. The moment they start integrating the AI into sex toys,
yeah, well, and that's the thing. A lot. We were talking during the break. There's a sex toy conference coming up, and most of the toys are aimed and targeted for women, but there's an increasing amount of products that are being designed for men, and a lot of them are the dolls, the big high-end dolls that you and I know that you can program the AIs into those dolls to respond the way that you want. And if you're a person who has a hard time engaging with other people socially, this is now become a viable option. So it's something worth keeping an eye on and just being personally aware of where our individual boundaries with it are, but also the social boundaries.
Incredible. You have someone like Mark Ronner. If he went to prison for 30 years and came out of prison, he wouldn't recognize this world at all.
Yeah. No, and that people from 30 years ago, if somebody went to prison in the 80s, came out right now, good Lord, they would be like, wait, I can find a date on here?
That's just a starting point. Explain the internet to them.
Yeah. No, and that's where we're at is in about 10, 15 years, who knows what we're going to be dealing with. The technology grows exponentially so fast that really you're right. Laws are going to be trailing behind, and people are going to be collecting as much money off of it as they can until restrictions are put in to keep people safe. Sam
Zia, the sex doctor, how can people reach out to you if they have information, have more questions?
If you want, you can hit me up on Psychology Today. My LMFT number 106352. Also, you can hit me up on my Instagram. It's at Sam Z on air.
It's Later with Mo Kelly. We'll see you again soon, Sam.
I'll see you.
Dr. Sam, excuse me. We're live everywhere, the iHeartRadio app and on YouTube and Instagram Live.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI, Mr. Mo Kelly. It's Later with Mo Kelly, live on YouTube and the iHeartRadio app and Instagram. And we love talking about all things TV and technology. Now let's talk about their intersection. Google has launched a new film and TV production initiative to scout projects it could fund or co-produce. Imagine that. The initiative is called 100 Zeros, and it's a multi-year partnership with Range Media Partners, a talent firm and production company known for its work on movies like A Complete Unknown and Longlegs. And Alphabet-owned Google is looking to boost the visibility and adoption of its newer offerings, including AI, of course, and spatial computing tools that blend the physical and virtual worlds through this initiative, which backed the marketing of indie horror film Cuckoo last year. Let me just stop right there. When you think about Google, which has been in the news for a number of reasons for being found liable in their monopoly case, Google is a behemoth. It is a monster in every sense of the word. But when you think about entertainment, I can understand what they're trying to do. When you have the internet literally at your disposal, when you are the top search engine, you're really directing people to different content. What if you then became the content delivery system and also the content which is being delivered? then you would own basically all the means and factors of production. And you could mainline people, the billions of Google users, specifically to that content. And remember, we're not necessarily required to go to a movie theater to watch a movie anymore. We have a lot of titles which never see a movie theater, which don't necessarily, when you're talking about Google, don't necessarily need a dedicated streaming platform, as it were, to see movies. And if I'm Google, it's like, okay, we have how many users and we have how many IPs and how many addresses and how much content can we send them to? Yeah, why don't we start producing our own stuff? Because we can mainline it directly to them. I understand what they're trying to do, and I would be shocked if not everyone else is already doing it. I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Meta has already started producing content. I'm pretty sure. I'll look it up, but I think they have. If they haven't, they're already talking about it, and they just haven't announced it. Because you can't have these millions of users of all things Meta from their Oculus and Facebook and Instagram, and not then also start pushing people to specific content that they're creating, that they own. They don't have to share with anyone else. That's the future of all this. And Google TV has already had a platform of its own called Google TV. I have all things Google at home because that's my ecosystem. I have a Pixel Watch. I have a Pixel 9a phone. I have Google TV on an Android TV at home. And I use Google Chrome. Why? Because it's seamless. Everything works together in a collaborative sense. I am the person who they want when they start creating content and then distributing it, because they can always find me, and everything they want to produce will find me. On the other end of the spectrum, I know there are people, I think, Stefan, everything in your life is Apple and Safari and Mac.
I'm pretty split. I got Apple phone, but I have a PC.
How does that work? I mean, I got a PC at home, if only because I have an audio software called Audition, Adobe Audition. Yeah. It only runs on PC, but outside of that.
Well, I mean, for one thing, the price is really expensive. Yeah. But then I talked to a lot of tech people, and basically you don't really need an Apple, like a MacBook specifically, unless you're doing like graphic art design. Yeah. And so I'm like, why spend that extra money? And my PCs work just fine. And I have a Samsung TV, and I have a Google Chrome too, Chromecast.
Chromecast as well. Mark, what are you? In an ecological sense,
I think I'm pretty much in the Apple cult. I've got a MacBook Pro that I replaced my 14-year-old MacBook Pro with, and I love those things. I have an iPhone. What else? I've iPad. You name it.
Okay, yeah,
it's all. I love that stuff. It's just so much user friendly. I resisted the cult for a long time, but then I got one of those huge screened iMacs because. I was doing comics, and you could put a script page next to an art page and display everything. They're wonderful.
And then if I tell you, hey, did you know that Apple also has Apple TV where they create their own content and distribute their own content, it wouldn't strike you as weird, now would it?
Got that too.
See? There is a methodology to all of this madness. Google may be a little bit later than Apple, but they already have Google TV, but they just don't have their own content in which they are creating, distributing, producing.
Yeah, now they just have to come up with something as good as, say, Slow Horses to get people to watch.
They got all the money in the world. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, that's not their problem.
Yeah. Money. So at that point, you just have to pick well. You don't have to pick many, just pick well. And then you will be on the same trajectory as Apple in that regard.
Yeah, the thing is, Apple, as you know, doesn't promote any of their shows.
They don't.
But they rely on word of mouth, and most of the stuff is so high quality that people wind up finding out about it anyway.
It is a great business model, and I see where it is going, and I'm here for it. Now, if Google can get one or two hits, I'm all the way in.
That's a good point, because I only knew about Ted Lasso because of producer Sharon Bellio, and then I learned about Slow Horses and Silo because of you two.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not even no commercials.
It's later with Mo Kelly. When we come back, we'll check in with George Noory, Coast to Coast AM, and also have my final thought, and it has to do with the Pope announcement today and also the politics in America today. That's next.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I don't know. Maybe it was just me. But the selection of a new pope today didn't seem as celebratory as in years past. I'm not a Catholic, okay? I'm not going to have the same type of feeling for the moment, and I admit that. But I went to a Jesuit Catholic university, Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I kind of know what the fanfare around it feels like. It is and was a deeply emotional day for many people. But this particular day, this time around, felt really different. Not because of anything the Catholic Church did or what may have transpired during the conclave, because that is kept from the public for a good reason. But the public reaction to the selection of Robert Prevost as the 267th pontiff, who took the name of Pope Leo XIV, it was different. That's the only way I could describe it. At least different here in America, that public reaction. And I mean the reaction to the first American-born pope and the reaction to that here in the U.S. Judging by the responses from the news media to social media, you think they just selected the next Supreme Court justice or something. For some people, the new pope is too woke. You know who you are. Imagine making that your first thought and comment. As an aside, if you think a pope is woke, wait until you actually read the Bible and find all the red print which highlights the words of Jesus. Your head might explode. But I digress. And for others, the announcement of Pope Leo XIV was met with barbs that he is a homophobe due to his previous remarks surrounding gay marriage. You know who you are. But there was very little discussion, comparatively speaking, about actually leading the Catholic Church. There was a whole lot about his previous statements, about American political figures and where he stands on issues such as Israel and Gaza. It's been pretty amazing to me, and I wasn't the only one who noticed it. The new pope may have been born in America and even attended college here in America at Villanova. But the Pope doesn't belong to America or answer to America. He belongs to the world. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but no Pope is chosen with your American political purity tests in mind. Not even one who happens to also be American. Even the selection of the Pope is by secret ballot. Put another way, it ain't about you, not individually or politically. Is the Pope in many ways viewed as a political figure? He can be. He can be as far as viewed. But American politics is not even in the top 150 items on his list. A pope may weigh in on issues of political or moral significance to the larger world, but his value as a pope will never be, and let me stress, will never be a reflection of your individual pet political beliefs at a particular time in particular portion of a particular country. Pope Leo XIV is ostensibly pope for life. Be that one day, 40 years, or some amount of time in between the two. Today was really strange, and I know Mark Ronner, he felt it was strange as well. Just sampling the feedback and analysis of who Robert Prevost, the cardinal, was and who Pope Leo XIV will be. And almost none of it, check this out, none of it had anything to do with Jesus Christ, the future of the Catholic Church, or whether his selection brings comfort to Catholics around the world presently. I was shocked, actually, and that's pretty hard to do. Even the news coverage was slanted to offer previews on where he might fall on controversial issues or whether he would be antagonistic to President Trump. I was thinking, y'all have it twisted. Y'all are worried about the wrong things. But then I remember, here in America, religion is for many an expression of their politics and nothing more. We put it in our bios. When I say we, I mean you. You put it in your bios on social media, not to tell everyone who and how we actually worship, but to signal to anyone reading what your political disposition is. Show me a social media bio with the word Christian in it, and I will show you a profile that talks mostly politics and virtually nothing about Jesus. Prove me wrong. I'll show you a profile which is clear on what they don't like, who they don't like, and who they voted for. Christian. It's almost like Jesus has nothing to do with anything called Christianity in 2025. Almost like that. That must be it, because that's the only explanation as to why people are more concerned about whether the new pope is a woke Marxist, and that's a quote, or is a homophobe, and that's a quote, instead of whether he is a disciple of Jesus and good for the future of the Catholic Church. Believe it or not everything is about you, your politics, or even your God. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly.
If you find yourself agreeing with everything we say, we're doing it wrong.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere.